Hi, I'm Tom Elliott with Deepwardly Spiritual Direction Services. Many of you have heard me talk about the difference between meditation and contemplation. I tend to think of meditation as prayer where there's an object to our focus, where maybe we're focusing on a scripture passage, or an image, or a word, or a topic of conversation that we want to have with God. Whereas contemplation I think of more as us allowing ourselves to be fully present in an active listening, a sort of spiritual leaning in toward God to hear what God has to say to us. Now, there are lots of different styles of contemplative prayer or ways for us to get into that listening disposition. But one of the ones that I really like and that tends to work well for me is a threefold process where we would sit down in prayer and simply be aware, first of all, of our physical disposition, our physical presence. And so, as we're sitting comfortably in a chair, we just let ourselves be aware of all the parts of our bodies, of what we're feeling. Is there tension in our neck? Or does our foot hurt? What are we feeling in our body, so to speak? And we might do that for several minutes. And then we move to the heart. What are we feeling? What are the affective movements that are stirring in our hearts? What are the emotions that we've been feeling throughout the past few minutes, maybe the past few hours, maybe the past few days? We simply allow ourselves to be aware of what's going on emotionally within us. We might do that for several minutes, and then we move to the mind, paying attention to what are we thinking about. All of us have an ongoing dialogue in our heads. Some people might talk about how they talk to themselves, but we all do that. There's always a dialogue going on in our heads, and part of contemplative prayer is to be aware of that dialogue and then to simply let it end. And so as part of that final stage of this simple method of contemplative prayer, we pay attention to what we're thinking, and then we choose to let that conversation in our head end. And when I notice that the conversation begins to crank back up, I literally just shush myself. I'll simply, as part of that breathing process, go shh and let that conversation cease again, so that in that quiet, in the peace that I'm feeling physically, emotionally, and mentally, I can hear God speak if He wants to. And there are some times in contemplative prayer where God doesn't say anything, and that's okay. Then there are other days in which He might share with me a word or a feeling, a sentiment, a hope, or maybe simply He shares with me His presence. I hope that's helpful. If you've not had an opportunity to try that style of contemplative prayer, I invite you to enjoy that. For other presentations and online retreats, please visit my website at www.deepwardly.com. May God bless you.